This is KCR, the sound of state.
Welcome, everybody, to Mainstage Mavericks on KCR, the sound of state. I hope everybody is having a wonderful Monday evening. I know the sun's come up. Go outside, play, get off the books, the TV, the Netflix, all of that. It's been lovely. Summer is finally here, and I have two very special guests with me. The first simply needs no introduction, but I'll give him a quick one anyway. John Tessmer, has performed in hundreds of shows across the country. He is a graduate from Yale University. He was raised in San Diego, and over the last 15 years, he's primarily been here doing shows. He's the co-founder of the La Jolla Theater Ensemble. If you name a show in San Diego, I guarantee John has been in it in several shows. Like, I'm going to say like 70% of them. What would you say, John? I know that there was an article about you a couple years ago in the Union Tribune, and it was saying that, like, you know, you're always like a go-to guy to have, like, in a cast in a show. Like, can you say that?
Well, I would take your compliment very, very nicely there, but I think that's probably an exaggeration.
You're my go-to guy.
Oh, thank you, Phil.
I want to cast you in a show.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to have you in a show.
Because I'm just thinking about Sherlock Holmes and the Great Gnome Gold Rush.
Yes.
That was the name of it, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, close. It's
Close?
a very long title.
It was
longer.
a long title, yeah.
Sherlock Holmes and the Adventure of the Great Gnome Gold Rush.
Ah, I was so close, wasn't I, Jeff?
Come on.
I know. And this is Geoffrey Ulysses Geissinger.
Yeah, full name.
Geoffrey Ulysses Geissinger, I've known him since about, I want to say 2011, right?
Yeah, 7th grade.
Yeah. I met John when I was in 8th grade, but Jeff at the very beginning of 7th grade. Jeff and I have done numerous shows together. He has been in shows I've written and directed and produced.
And you've been in shows that I've written and directed.
And produced. Yes. Even aborted ones that never
Well, maybe save that for later.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. But you're a student at St. Mary's
College of California.
Yeah, what grade are you in?
I am a 14th grader. I'm a sophomore.
You're a sophomore.
Or going to be. I'm a sophomore. I finished my first year. I'm a sophomore in college.
You're a sophomore in college. Yeah, it was a good year. It was a good year.
Yeah, it was a good year. Do you want me to just dive into it, or do we want to?
Well, we'll get to that later.
We'll get to that later.
But John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. As you said in your wonderful introduction, summer is here. It's just a great vibe all over the city.
I know.
Looking forward to getting in the ocean, which I used to do almost every month of the year, but I don't live right by the beach anymore, so now it takes a little more effort to get there.
Do you still live in La Jolla?
I still do, yes, but now I live up on Mount Soledad rather than right in Wind and Sea.
That's cool.
I used to be able to walk to the beach.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You used to surf?
No, just swim, really.
Just swim?
Yeah.
Body surf at all?
A little bit of body surfing.
A little bit. Because you grew up in La Jolla.
I grew up in University City,
Oh,
so
okay.
very, very close to La Jolla. I went to La Jolla Country Day School, actually, from 2nd through 12th grade.
Oh, I love La Jolla Country Day.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful school.
A very beautiful school. It's changed a lot.
They've gone through. It looks like a brand new school if you go by it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I remember the first time I ever went there. My friend was in a show like 5 years ago. And the school, I remember going up to it, and it looks like a university campus. You know, everything just looked so new. They recently renovated it. The sign is like the shiny royal blue when you drive up, and the theater was beautiful. It's a really cool school. But like back then, when you when you went there, when you graduated there 4 years ago, it was a different looking school.
Yeah, in fact, I think only one set of buildings is still standing from when I was there.
Oh, wow.
And that building, that set of buildings was the new set when I was there. And now it's the oldest. So it's doing very well. They have a much bigger student body than I was there, but it's still a small school.
Still a small school.
Yeah, so one of the best things about it is, and maybe it's less true now because, as you guys know from having recently graduated, you have to start focusing a little bit earlier on things. So back in the day when I was in school, I was able to do sports and all the other kinds of extracurricular activities. in addition to the academics. So that was wonderful
Totally.
because I was not up to being an athlete. Probably on their teams now. Hopefully, I could still perform.
Yeah. Did that still get you into? Did that get you into shows then? The school and like the arts they provided and.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really grew to love it then. I didn't know that I was going to go on to do things professionally, but I partly chose my college because it had a great passion for the arts and theater in particular.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. What was the first show you ever did?
Oh my gosh.
Can you remember?
Well, I did shows at like church and things like that, and then little things like performances, but they were more singing, like Glee Club chorus things,
Right.
At Country Day, and then sixth grade I think was maybe the first full production, which was a production of The Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
Which was a full school show because, of course, you had munchkins.
Yeah.
So even in sixth grade, I was one of the taller munchkins. But that was a rare thing for there to be elementary school students.
Those mic levels peaked so much. That's okay. It's okay. It's actually better if it peaks, apparently.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. But
Today I learned.
Yeah. You went there from K through 12 then, right?
Second grade through 12.
Second grade through 12. Okay.
Yeah.
And your parents preferred that over Bishops or?
That's a good question because Bishops is right near the church that I kind of grew up in La Jolla, St. James Episcopal Church. But no, La Jolla Country Day was closer to home. I don't know if we even considered Bishops.
Interesting.
Well, Bishops, I don't know if it was the same back then, but it was basically just junior high and high school. So we moved to.
Oh yeah, I think it's 6 through high school. Yeah,
6 through high school, and I think that's what it was then too. So we moved to the San Diego area from the Midwest, and I started at Curie School in second grade, way back. In University City, and that was a year-round school. So I finished up first grade there and started second, and then applied to Country Day and was.
Nice.
It's a weird thing to say as a second grader, but fortunate enough to get in.
Yeah.
And
you had to apply to. They didn't accept everybody into the school because that's the nature of the private schools, right?
I guess so. Yeah.
You have to go through like an interview, maybe.
Similar
with the kid.
Cathedral.
Cathedral Catholic High School.
Yeah. So that's where I spent my first 2 years of high school, and to go there, you have to take a test that's like math, science, reading. And I think it's like mainly those three things. There's maybe like a dumbed down SAT, obviously, because most 8th graders aren't ready to jump into the SAT yet, but a test to kind of maybe see your aptitude.
Aptitude test, yeah.
Yeah. And so you have to take that, and then I'm sure they look at your record as like a student and like disciplinary records. I can't speak for all private schools, but it's not just it's a common thing.
I remember I was going to Earl Warren Middle School, right? And I wasn't enjoying it in 7th grade. And I was heavily thinking of transferring to Santa Fe Christian. I was like, oh,
really?
Yeah, it's a true story.
This is new to me.
You never knew that?
I've known you since Earl Warren, and this is new to me.
It was crazy because, like, I really wasn't enjoying Earl Warren. I wanted to change, and I spent another year at Earl Warren. That's what ended up happening. But I even shadowed a friend at Santa Fe Christian, and I loved the school. I thought it was so cool. I loved wearing a uniform because I hated anything fashion back then. I loved that, you only had these clothes to wear every day, and it wasn't, everyone was wearing the same thing. So
it's nice because it kind of sometimes it takes the decision out of it.
Totally.
And you don't have to worry. You're just like, okay, I'm going to pick one of my 3 different polos and put that on and wear my khaki shorts, and then like you're good to go.
I grouped myself in the same category of like Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs, where they wear the same clothes every day. And I figured like, oh yeah, they're geniuses. They can do that. Like, I'd like to do that. Sure. Why not? But I remember during my interview, it went horribly wrong because I wasn't doing very well in school at the time. And so I remember I was meeting with this guy who also, he already didn't like us because he realized we weren't super religious. Like, their interview process was really amped up that specific year, where it's like if you didn't go to church every single Sunday, they were like, oh, like they're not real Christians, something like that. And I remember he was going over my transcripts, and he was saying, oh, so you're failing this math class right now. Like I had a 68%, like at that very specific time in math, and I ended up passing with a flying colors like 70%. But at that time, he was just like, oh, here we really like we encourage like a B average for transfers. I didn't know what to say. I was in 7th grade. I was just like, oh, yeah, and it was just awkward. And then I don't think I got accepted into Santa Fe Christian, to be honest. Like if I think about it, I don't know.
That's wild.
It didn't go well, but enough about me.
Well, they missed out.
That's my story.
Did you finish up at Earl Warren, Phil?
I finished up Earl Warren in 8th grade. Was a lot better than 7th grade. I got used to it, and I went to Canyon Crest Academy for high school. So it all went well, And I went to the school I wanted to go to in the end, and I'm very glad I didn't end up going to Santa Fe Christian. I'm glad I didn't, because I probably would have wanted to stay there for high school, which wouldn't have been a good decision, because I really found myself at Canyon Crest, and I had a lot of opportunities to do many things that Santa Fe Christian didn't offer. So that was cool.
Have you talked on your program about the Envision program at Canyon Crest?
Oh, Envision Conservatory? No,
Yeah.
I haven't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you were in that, right?
Yeah, I was in that. I was Jeff and I were both in that Envision Theater Conservatory.
Yeah, make sure you leave me in like the past. Like I was in like
Jeff
we
quit.
both so I quit.
Yeah.
And so you were in all 3 years.
I was in all 3 years, and Jeff. Yeah, I was in all 3 years. I auditioned as a freshman, got in, stayed in until I graduated. While Jeff actually went to Cathedral for the first 2 years of high school.
And so the theater teacher at CCA was originally I'd known her from working at North Coast Rep, where she was the theater school director there. And so I was planning on transferring, and I'd gotten into CCA, and I was getting prepared, and so I took initiative, because huge reason why I was transferring was the theater program. So I got in touch with Miss Marquis, and I was like, well, hey, like, how does the conservatory program, can I audition for the program even if I don't go to the school, but I'm going to be enrolling next year? And she was like, oh yeah, sure. So I auditioned, then I got in my junior year going in. So like my second day of school, I also had my first day of conservatory. So what kind of happened is like I showed up to the conservatory meetings that were held in the May before. So the May of our
you were still
sophomore
going to
year,
Cathedral.
I was still like going to Cathedral, but I went to conservatory meetings, and I remember showing up, and Phil was the only one that I knew from my time in middle school. And from what I'd heard, everyone went up to Phil and was like, "Who is this mysterious Jeff
everyone
kid?"
was asking, who is this guy? Like, what can he do? Because conservatory. There's a lot of kids that do primarily musical theater, I would say, for the most part, that are in conservatory as of late. And so at that time, that was especially prevalent. And so everyone was going up, and like, they're like, oh, Jeff, like, like what's his range? Like, what's his singing range? Like, he's this like, who is this triple threat that just like wandered onto campus? And I was like, okay, so he's a really great actor. We did plays. We all did plays, but like he really doesn't sing that much. Like he and I are kind of similar in terms of like, singing. And they're like, oh, thank God. Oh, okay. Oh my God. Okay.
No competition.
Yeah, no competition. Because everyone was super nervous. Because it's just like, like if a guy shows up in a theater program in high school, like a new guy, it's like, whoa.
Well, and the same thing happened like last year, I don't know this year, but a kid came named Miles Blue, and he transferred.
And he's a musical theater guy.
And he's a musical theater kid. But what happened is he transferred in, and like myself, like into conservatory his first year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And everyone went like, he's the new Jeff.
Yeah. he's the new Jeff, but it's like, yeah, it's interesting in that predicament because you get these people in this program, and they go through each year of the program, and it's very set, and they have expectations of themselves like, oh, I'm this certain level of talent, I can do this, so for sure I'm going to get these roles, and there's nobody else that's my competition. And then when like a new person comes in and they match it or better it, oh, it's a rift.
It gets catty.
Yeah, it gets catty, and it just gets into like all this. There's a lot of drama in drama. Yeah. So and speaking of drama, in education as it is, you went to Yale, correct?
I did.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
I guess, yeah.
It was very cool. It was
Yeah.
It was very challenging because of having been at La Jolla Country Day. I felt prepared in many ways.
Yes.
But as you guys are experiencing now, college is, of course, another level up, and You kind of have to step up your game in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Were your parents, did they go to Ivy League schools, or were they?
Well, my mom did, and my dad pretty close. He went to the Ivy League of the Midwest school, namely Northwestern.
Oh, awesome! My mom went to Northwestern.
Right.
She went to Kellogg, the grad school.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's awesome.
So my dad went to Northwestern as an undergrad, and my mom went to Brown.
Oh wow, you
had
had very educated parents. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's. I mean, not to make you guys jealous, but I didn't even think about where I was going to college until maybe sophomore year.
That's crazy.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, barely. Now I know it's something that you're probably thinking about in junior high or something.
Well, yeah. Obviously, like, just knowing you, like, you're very smart, and you're very much like, I was never like, oh, John went to Yale. It was always just like, oh, that makes perfect sense, because you're just such a erudite. Is that the right word? Like. I don't know. Like, smart, well-rounded,
know the word.
Smart, well-rounded person. I don't know. But yeah, like, because, like, for a lot of people nowadays, it's like, you come out of the womb and it's, you got to prepare for college.
Right.
No matter what your circumstances or surroundings are, because everybody,
you come out of the womb in your little, like, Harvard, like, sweatshirt, like, I'm ready to go. And then, like, dad whips out his Harvard dad, like, t-shirt.
Who are you referencing?
I don't know. But I feel like there's like junior high or even younger, like there's this pressure, specifically where we grow up in Carmel Valley, suburban, affluent area.
I'm from Del Mar, but
okay.
Yeah.
It's more like Rancho Del Mar. You're almost in
We're unincorporated San Diego. I don't know. Yeah, we're in there.
CCA's in Carmel Valley.
Yeah.
Still a super affluent area, Del Mar. And so there's this pressure when you're growing up of, like, where are you gonna go? And there's also, like, these stigmas of like even like 2-year junior colleges for some kids aren't good enough, or their parents tell them it's, like, not good enough. So there's, like, this extreme pressure that I think unfairly is lit under kids. That's like 4-year university is the expectation, even though, like, there's nothing wrong with not going to university. There's nothing wrong with going to a trade school. There's nothing wrong with just going into the workplace.
It's so weird that these kids have, like, a stigma against, going to junior college first and then transferring to university, because it's just like, you're saving a lot of money if you do that, and it's a very smart decision in the long run. And like, B, it's just like, you have a huge, you have a higher chance of, like, transferring from, like, a junior college to, like, a really great university, in some cases, which are a lot better than coming straight out of high school, like, based on, like, what your GPA was, So it's just, like, it's such a weird stigma to have, because, like, nobody's ever going to ask you, like, oh, did you go all 4 years to St. Mary's, or did you transfer from, like, a junior college? Like, no. Like, nobody asks that question.
The only thing people care about is where you get your diploma from.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, like, you could go to UCLA for 3 years, and then, like, the last year you graduated from USC,
And where would you say you're an alma mater, or where would you say is your alma mater?
USC. Yeah, it's just like, it's weird, but, like, for you went to Yale in the 80s?
Correct. Yes.
Correct. What was it like, because had you been there? Had you toured the school before
I did tour the school, and
which is probably smart. Yeah.
Actually, I toured the school, not to give my age away too much, but it's kind of fun as part of the story. The Padres were in their first World Series when I was touring the school.
Oh wow!
And in fact, it wasn't no, it was actually the game that they won it all in, I think, or no, at least tied up the series.
Okay. Padres have not won a World Series.
No. They didn't win. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm talking. Thank you, Jeff. Sound like a moron about sports.
No, I'm sorry.
Not. No. It was against the Cubs. So I was actually visiting.
Oh.
I was visiting Princeton. The game Steve Garvey hit the big home run to win that game, and then send it to I can't remember which game it was, because the Cubs won the first two games of the series, and then the Padres won the last 3. So I was at Princeton one night, and then in New Haven for an afternoon game the day after. So it was pretty exciting.
Gotcha.
That was the Padres' first of 2 only times in the World Series, neither of which they have won, as Jeff points out.
That's crazy. Just to clarify, so you didn't go to Yale School of Drama.
No, Yale School of Drama is a graduate program.
Oh,
but
okay.
I kind of alluded to this earlier that the spirit of the drama school kind of permeates down to the undergraduate level.
So did you do theater at Yale?
I did a lot of theater at Yale. I took classes. I was not a theater major. Again, I didn't know that's what I was going to go into, but I just knew I wanted to continue my involvement in it.
There's no undergrad for theater at Yale?
No, there's an undergraduate major, but the drama school.
Oh, the Yale School of Drama specifically is grad.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And when did you go at the same time as No, she would definitely be before. Meryl Streep would definitely be before you.
She would definitely be
Yeah,
before
no,
me.
I forgot that. Yeah, Meryl Streep's almost 70. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah,
She's
I
a
forgot.
goddess.
Yeah, I forget.
She
I
is.
forget how old she is, but she's ageless.
Because she looks so young.
yeah, she
it's
looks
ridiculous.
so young. Yeah. So yeah, that's crazy. But
So what did you?
was Jodie Foster there?
Great question. She had recently graduated, I believe.
Okay.
If she even did, I think she got a degree.
Because I know she was going to classes there. Yeah.
Do you remember the actress from Flashdance?
Jennifer Beals.
Yeah. She was there overlapping with me a little bit.
Okay.
But I can name drop a little bit more of some folks who
I
were
want to hear
there.
it. Yeah, go for it.
Well, maybe the biggest star that you would all know who was in my class was Paul Giamatti.
Oh,
Well, did you meet Paul Giamatti? Like, were you buddies with him?
No, I was
or-
not buddies with him, but I saw his work and he was tremendous.
Did you ever walk past him in the hallway? Like, was it that close? Or,
No,
you didn't have any classes
I
with him?
don't think I had any classes with Paul, but I knew, of course, I had common acquaintances and some friends with him, but I never got a chance to work with him. But I saw him play Falstaff in Henry IV, Part 1.
And was he good?
He was fantastic.
He was fantastic, yeah.
And even better in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf as George.
Oh, I could see that. That's
Yeah.
really cool. That's amazing.
He was an amazing,
Did he have more hair?
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was, man, I love Paul Giamatti.
And a couple other guys that I knew better than Paul. Ron Livingston was.
I've heard that name.
Was one class above me, I think. He's kind of best. Well, he's known for a lot of things, but the movie Swingers was kind of an independent film that he did that kind of helped him rise. And then he was in that movie with Jennifer Aniston, Office Space, which is almost like a cult classic.
Oh yeah, Office. I've seen some clips from Office Space.
Yeah.
I've seen the one where they. I know that they
trash the computer.
Yeah, they destroy the
right.
computer. I've seen that.
Yeah, it's a great fun movie. And he's done lots of stuff since. I think he's got a sitcom now that he's in. That's I don't know what network it's on, but I saw one episode of it. He's very good.
Were you in a fraternity?
No, see, Yale does have some fraternities, but mostly they have people just affiliated with what are called residential colleges.
Okay.
And that's another great thing from a theater standpoint is that every residential college has its own sort of dramatic society, and they're all producing shows.
That's really cool.
That sounds so cool.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Well, for Jeff, and actually a little bit for me too. We both for some reason, I don't know, it's just like there's not a lot of independent theater companies at our schools.
No.
Yeah, it's weird because for UCLA and USC, there's something like 40 independent theater companies between like both of them separately have so many theater companies.
Yeah, and USC also has like a number of improv groups. With the main one being
have
Cometus
seven- they have
Interruptus.
seven improv
The big one being
groups.
Cometus Interruptus, who Jacob Sorofsky, who you've had on the show
Yeah,
before,
my
is
friend
on.
Jacob.
But also, like if you watch SNL, Beck Bennett and Kyle Mooney are alums of Cometus Interruptus.
It has a
and then-
Wikipedia page if you look it
Yeah.
up. It's a big improv group.
It's a big thing. And then one of the schools that I was also considering at one point, was Emerson, and they have like 17 like improv groups, and are like because they're such a theater heavy school and they have like comedy as a major. But I ended up choosing a school that has no student performing group, no improv group on campus, even though some of the other schools I was considering did have some. And so Phil and I have talked about this at length before. I found myself a lot getting bored because there's one main stage show a semester, And so in the fall, I was in And Jesus Moonwalks the Mississippi by Marcus Gardley, which is a wonderful show. And one of the things I learned very, very quickly and very like that made me like fill up with like childlike joy is like the production quality and value of the technical aspects of the theater are so like amped up compared to what you experience in high school. And the pictures that we have of the show are so beautiful.
Your
like
pictures are great.
Yeah,
those remind me of North Coast Rep theater school pictures. How they were always super high def, and it looked really cool.
Like the pictures, like the lighting, the like we had a fog machine for the show.
Ooh.
The costumes were period. The props. So like the main stage was super cool.
San Diego State's main stage shows too. Their costumes are amazing, and you know the sets are beautiful. The staging's great.
Well, I took a tour when we were here for the visit day, and we ran into each other.
Tour, yeah.
I like went and they have this like massive like costume room where they like. And like their scene shop is huge.
It's huge. Their sets are incredible. What they build, and there's something like 3 different classes that are like shop building classes. So they all work on the sets together, and so they make these humongous sets.
Yeah. So the main stage shows are awesome, and then they do a Jan term show, which is kind of for basically non-theater majors. We have a Jan term. So you have a fall semester, a spring semester. In between that, during the month of January, you have Jan term, where you usually take a class that's completely outside of your major. And is
Are you on semester or quarter?
We're on semester.
Okay, same. Yeah.
Yeah. So you take this one class, and it has nothing to do most of the time with any of your subjects. Sometimes you can take like a math class, but it's kind of like it's Jan term. Like studies, like you can study in Fiji and learn about like meditation. Or like you can go to Sundance and learn about film criticism. So I took a class on board games, but they have a class on like children's theater where you put on the show and they bring in like buses full of school kids into our theater. And then so there's that. So there's the 2 main stages. There's the one in the spring, which every other year is typically a musical. And then there is the 1 acts, which apparently a few years ago weren't student directed. It was I think Susan Laurie Parks, but this year, in looking down the road, they're student directed, student produced, student written, student acted.
Really cool.
Which is a wonderful opportunity. But what I found myself is I didn't get cast in the spring main stage because there was only 1 male role and I just didn't fit the part. And so I found myself just like sitting there like twiddling my thumbs because a bunch of the other really talented people were studying abroad. And because the school is so small, like the undergrad is 2,800. And the theater department is like even smaller.
It's pretty much
than that.
the size of our former high school, his school.
And the theater department is way smaller because it's not like...
smaller than conservatory?
Yeah.
At CC. That's
we
crazy.
had 3 graduating seniors. We
That's
had 1
crazy.
major and 2 minors. Usually it's a little bit bigger than that. So that was like a small class. But it's a really small theater department where everybody knows like everything about everybody.
Yeah,
it's
just
super
like
duper,
high school again.
Yeah, it's like a super duper intimate thing. There's less clickiness than high school, which is nice. But so what happens is like if you're not in the main stage show and you aren't doing anything, you're just like sitting there twirling. Like, how do I keep myself like artistically motivated and artistically doing something? And I like tried to start an improv group, but what I found very quickly is a bunch of people were either too busy or like the times couldn't work or they weren't super interested. And so I like in my head I'm sitting there like, why am I like I just a lot of frustration of not feel like I'm able to challenge myself in the way that I wanted to going to school. And although I didn't choose a BFA, like that was one of the things I didn't want. I was like, I want a BA where I can branch out and get my hands into a bunch of different pots, but still, like, if I want to dive into theater and live in the theater. And so I found myself being super duper frustrated my first year, but one of the nice things that happened, sorry, I'm kind of ranting here, but...
it's okay, it's okay.
One of the nice things that happens is where the school itself is super duper connected with the Bay Area theater scene, which is a big theater scene in the U.S. ACT, which is one of the biggest regional theaters in the country, and there's like Marin Theater, I think it's Marin Theater Company, California Shakespeare in Orinda. So there's a bunch of theaters, and so they have really close relationships with St. Mary's. And so I actually got to know and work with the casting director of San Francisco Playhouse, Lauren English, who's an absolutely wonderful human being, teacher, educator. And so I might be helping out at that theater. So what I found myself is like kind of like, because I'm not able to challenge myself there, kind of like, well, I kind of got to look elsewhere. So like hopefully next year is like, I'm going to try and get get into an improv group in Berkeley, as well as help out at some regional theaters to kind of start creating relationships that are like really, really, I think, important as a theater artist. It's all about
you gotta find the work for yourself, and you gotta create it sometimes.
Self-advocacy.
Totally.
and because it's collaborative art, it's all about your relationships you have with people. And if people if you have a good relationship with people, you're more likely to be successful, because
Totally.
people will want to work with you, and they'll know the kind of work you can put on stage in this collaborative form. So yeah, and I've plans that I can, maybe we can talk about a little bit later, of like how I'm gonna like move forward into like also creating stuff on campus. But I had problems. What are like some of the problems you've had, Phil, of kind of?
Well, we'll get right back to that, but we're gonna take a commercial break, and then John, I'm gonna ask you some more questions about some classes you took at Yale. But here's a commercial break.
Head to newscenter.sdsu.edu/events to see many of the awesome events and opportunities available to SDSU students. Find events such as leadership workshops, movie nights, sports games, and career fairs. There's plenty to get involved in, so check out newscenter.sdsu.edu/events today.
Make sure to follow KCR on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at KCR College Radio, all caps, for weekly news and sports updates, as well as the latest giveaway opportunities.
This is KCR, the sound of state, and I'm Phillip Magin, and we're back with John Tessmer and Geoffrey Ulysses Geissinger. We were talking a lot about Jeff and his life story.
I love your energy, Jeff. It's great.
No, I love it too. It's great. And you're in the red zone, so it's good. It's the finish line. Jeff. I'm sorry, not Jeff. I'm just so used to just talking to you.
I'm sorry,
It's a joke. John, at Yale, what were some of the classes you took that you really enjoyed in your 4 years?
In the theater department, or
any department?
Oh my gosh,
there's things that like you liked about the school. It could be clubs, it could be classes. Teachers, maybe.
It was interesting because one of the great things about Yale, at least at that time, and I don't know if they still do it, is they had a shopping period for classes. And it was both a blessing and a curse for me, because I was interested in so many different things that I would really shop around and go to like 20 classes for the first 2 weeks and then try to narrow it down. And
that's really cool.
I almost always signed up for one more class than I ended up taking, and then dropping it halfway through the semester, which was wonderful exposure. But then it spread me more thin than I already was, because I was doing all the extracurricular stuff.
Totally.
But
in the public university world, you try and get a class, and then it's full, and then you decide to wait on the wait list, and then you don't get in. That's what I've come to know over the last year.
Wow. Yeah.
It's a crazy system, but like you there were some classes that you audited.
Yeah. Basically, it ended up being an audit. For half the semester.
Were some of them like so you audited a lot of different classes, and were there some where you were like, oh, I'd love to take this, but it's impossible because there's too many credits? And
yeah, my plate was too full, so I was stretching my limits or testing my limits, and then I would usually have to cut back. But the point of even going through all that was that I can honestly say that there were almost no classes that I took that I didn't want to take.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I was lucky enough to place out of a bunch of requirements, so I didn't have those to contend with.
General ed requirements.
Yeah, and just what they call distribution requirements. But so I took classes all over the map, not heavy in math and science, which is kind of too bad because I liked math and science, but I was sort of discouraged from taking math and science classes from people who were pre-med, who were saying you're going to get killed in these classes because it was highly competitive and they were almost trying to weed people out.
Totally.
And I said, well, I can just take, you were allowed to take a certain number of classes pass-fail. I said, I'll just take a couple pass-fail. And they said, no, you'll, I mean, they weren't putting me down. They were like, it's so hard that you may struggle to pass. And I was like, well, I don't need that. Thank you very much. So I took a lot of humanities and social science classes, theater classes. I was an English major, which was kind of almost the the biggest catch-all because I took a film studies class in that class. I took some Shakespeare lecture classes, poetry classes.
And your professors, were there any professors that were very renowned in their fields and they were...
Those ended up being the ones that I sort of audited, especially some history professors.
They'd publish books. And
exactly,
all this,
yeah. But I mean, they were terrific. But those were lecture classes, so you didn't get to know them very well.
Yeah, they showed up, and everyone was "Oh, wow!"
And they were great. So some terrific classes, and then the smaller classes were the ones where you really get to know the professors more.
Like for your drama classes, was it very one-on-one with the professor? Was it a small theater you'd go into and you do warm-ups and they touch you to move you? How would it work?
Yeah, I took one acting class.
That sounded weird, but
okay.
They're with you. They're acting with you.
It's a great question, Phillip. I got into that kind of class more in grad school because I wasn't.
Where'd you go to grad school?
I went to grad school at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee.
Okay.
So I took like one acting class and one directing class, and then a lot of more like English lit classes, but focusing on the dramatic work.
So do you have an MFA in theater?
I have an MFA in acting.
In acting.
From the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and that was a 3-year program, very intense, where we did the kind of thing we're talking about.
It was a 3-year program.
It was a 3-year program.
Yeah, there's a good number of 3 years.
That's a long.
It was a long
grad school. Yeah. Because I know for my mom, she went to Kellogg and it was 2 years.
Yeah.
That's three. That's almost like you were like a doctor in theater almost.
Well, that was a doctor would be a PhD, which I didn't do, but I know you know.
I know
that.
my terms.
I know. Yeah. But that was the route that made sense for me, coming from a kind of an academic background.
And did you go straight? Did you spend a couple years out of Yale?
I did. I came back here, in fact, and I just started acting in community theater, and then I don't know how much I worked my way up exactly, but eventually I got a job at a theater up in Salinas, California, in the Monterey area.
Steinbeck country.
Yes, Steinbeck country. And I first.
Am I wrong, Jeff?
No.
Okay.
No. I just never. I learned something new.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No.
Oh, yeah. No, like it's you drive by and it's like John Steinbeck Highway, and you see the fields, and you're like, oh wow, like I'm in one of his books right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a great museum there. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I did a summer there, and then the next year, my second year out of college, I did like an 8-month season at the Western Stage. Mm-hmm. And by this time, I thought I was pretty sure I wanted to continue down this path.
So post like graduating, it was because you had the English degree,
right?
And so with that, were you thinking, oh, I want to be an English teacher, I want to be a professor? What were you thinking?
You know what? To be completely honest, which is a nice thing to be, I didn't know.
You didn't know?
I considered going to law school, and then I thought, you know what? I don't know. Let me explore this for a little while. And so that's when I came back here and started acting when I was 22, 23, 24. Spent a couple of years getting into shows and thinking that I was at least holding my own and hopefully getting a little bit better, but that I really needed to get more training. Mm-hmm. So I made the choice to go to grad school. Some people don't need to take that path.
Some people, they drop out of high school and they just act.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as Jeff was saying earlier, in sort of a different context, I mean, everybody's path is different. You can go to junior college for whatever path you're on, whether you're in theater or anything else, and then go on, or who knows, maybe you don't even get your degree until you're 30 or 40. Yeah.
To all our listeners, you can be whatever you want to be. That's what I have
believe
to say.
you can achieve.
If you can achieve. I totally say that. You've done everything. You were even a show April 16th through May 23rd, 1999, called Busman's Honeymoon at Lamb's Players Theater.
I was.
I wanted to pick a random show to just go back in your memory a bit. Can you tell us a little bit about that show?
Well, it was a wonderful show. It was a lot of fun. It's based on a Dorothy Sayers novel, Sadly, I mean, it's a wonderful memory and a great time that we had. That's the only time I've ever worked at Lamb's Players, which is down on Coronado, a wonderful theater among many here in San Diego. And it's even been a long time since I've auditioned for there, so I really ought to step on that and get on down there and audition again.
Are you Equity?
I used to be Equity. In fact, it wasn't long after that show that I turned Equity and was Equity for about 6 years. And in that time period, I was traveling around the country getting work wherever I could.
Where were some places that you got work?
Well, one place was back at the Western Stage in Salinas. I worked at the Idaho Rep.
Ooh.
Did a couple shows there one year, and a lot of my regional work was at the Colorado Shakespeare Festival.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so I did 6 years there, not continuously, but 6 out of 8 years.
Did you work at a Shakespeare Festival with David Ellenstein and Ray Chambers?
Oh, I wish. No, I did not.
'Cause I know that they because you've worked with them at North Coast Rep.
I've met Ray briefly, but I've worked with David.
You worked with David.
I've been fortunate enough to be in a number of shows.
If I can jump in, what is that like? Because as growing up at North Coast Rep, we know David is like the artistic director. What is it like to work with him? Like what is he like as a director?
Yeah.
Well, he's a very confident director, and by that I don't mean that he's arrogant in any way or dictatorial. He's confident enough to let his actors explore.
That's great.
Of course, he has his ideas, and he will share those. But whenever I've had a chance to work with David, I feel it's very much a collaborative process, which, as Jeff said earlier, that's what you want from a theater production.
That's incredible.
You want to be collaborating with your fellow actors, with the director, with the designers. And I've been fortunate enough in my life, in my career, to mostly be in very supportive, energizing, collaborative projects. So I'm very spoiled, and if I run into one that is not like that,
not to work with them again, or
right, or hopefully I know not even to get involved in the first place.
Totally.
I think only one time have I dropped out of a show.
Oh wow!
But it was early enough on that I don't think I was letting them down too much. But
totally, and you got to do that sometimes. If you know that it's going to be, oh man, it's going to be like months of this or weeks of this, like it's not worth it.
Yeah, it's not worth it, and if you're not going to be happy, then you're not going to help anybody else with what they're trying to accomplish.
At my age, I like to think that with every single show I've done, no matter how good or how bad it's been, I've learned something from it.
Well, right, and that's the other side of that coin is that sometimes it's okay to stick it out.
It just because you learn something about if there's warning signs from day one of the read through, if it's going to be like a hellacious process or it's going to be a supportive and a nurturing one, or what you're to expect from this cast and crew and the director leading the helm.
Yeah, I don't want to encourage anybody to drop a commitment.
No, I'm not.
Drop a commitment that they've made.
Yeah, no, totally.
Because that can be a bridge burning situation, which maybe you don't want to do.
Yeah, you definitely not opening night, you don't show up. Definitely not one of those classic movie scenes where it's where's John?
No, that.
Have you seen him in the dressing room? He hasn't signed in.
Yeah, totally. What were some of your favorite roles throughout all the years you've been an actor? What are some favorite roles and companies that you've been a part of?
Wow, that's a great question, and I should be more prepared to answer.
No, because a lot of, I don't know if you're one of the people, but it's a lot of times people are like, oh, what's your favorite role? And you're like, oh, it's the one I'm working on right now, and because you get so invested in it.
Absolutely, and that hopefully is true for a lot of people. I guess I can go to a couple. Not that I couldn't go to dozens of them actually, but I had one year of my 6 at the Colorado Shakespeare Festival, which was by far the most challenging and also the most fulfilling. And I was given the opportunity to play Brutus and Julius Caesar, and then at the same time Pistol and Henry V.
Ooh.
Which I was also had the privilege of of playing again many years later with a company here in town called New Fortune Theater Company.
Hey,
So that's fun to be able to tackle a role for a second time.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And
Sorry for
No,
like,
jump
but
on
when you
in.
find
Go
yourself
for it.
playing like a role a second time, do you find yourself like change? Like, do you go in like, oh, I've done this role before, it's gonna be the same way, or do you like it's a new production and like a new concept and a new group of people? So do you kind of then like build that character around the rest of your ensemble?
Absolutely. The latter. Yeah. I mean,
it's not like you got this frozen character in your mind. Like, I'm going to play it like
No.
this every single time, no matter how the cast is.
not at all.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, of course not.
Yeah.
Because it's a whole different world. It's a whole different production. I mean, you can draw on some knowledge that you've gained from having played it before, and I mean, maybe some lines are going to come out the same way, but it's going to be a completely different show, and that you better attend to that.
Totally. I want to ask really quick. How there's this awesome thing in La Jolla where many staged readings are done. And
What might that be called?
you mean the La Jolla Theater Ensemble?
Well, I was listening to Jeff earlier when he was talking about what he wants to do when maybe he hasn't been cast in something in his school up at St. Mary's and wanting to branch out and really be a go-getter. And I think that's just so refreshing. And it took me many years to have the gumption to do what you're talking about doing. So I really salute you for that. But this was a little company that a friend of mine and I founded not quite 10 years ago, but coming up on that. And we've just been doing staged readings since 2010. So,
Oh wow.
yeah, not quite a decade yet, but into our 9th year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's continued to grow. I really enjoy getting a chance to work with some of the best actors in town. They're quick projects. We usually have 2 to 4 rehearsals and then 2 performances, but it's a way to share the story with the audience. It's a way to stick your teeth into a role and into a play and make it happen. Even though you're still a staged reading for anybody who hasn't seen one, the actors are on book, but if you're doing a good job, the audience will almost forget that you're holding script.
Totally. Totally. I've been to I've unfortunately only seen 2 of the stage readings.
That's all right.
And there's many that happen all the time. But I saw a stage reading of, I think it was called Alas Poor Yorick.
Oh yeah.
And
Right.
it happened 3 years ago, and Abby Despain was in it. Mo Hetzer, he's a young Abby Despain. She was a young actress. Now she's a young ballerina.
Yes.
And she won a Craig Knoll Award for.
She did.
Yeah, for outstanding young artist, right? I think.
Maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
She did.
That's awesome.
She did. And then Mo Hetzer, I directed him in a play I wrote 2 years ago called Lady Windermere's Fam, which Jeff was in, and I love Mo, and he's great. And I remember because I had worked with Mo over at North Coast Rap Theater School, where we did shows and where Jeff and I think learned a lot of the bulk of our early training, and that's where Jeff did his first show at North Coast Rep, Charlotte's Web.
Yeah.
And that's where you met John.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's where all 3 of us met each other. And,
Yeah.
and that's how I knew Abby and Mo from there as well.
Yeah. And what was that like working with John, Jeff?
Well, okay. I mean, I'm sure I was a Dickens to work with.
A Dickens to work with.
Because so how I got dragged in is I did some summer camps previously, and during these summer camps you're with this group kind of around your age, and you make up a play and you put it on at the end of the week. And I remember from what I remember about myself, always wanting to be no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I want to do this. And being a super I'm still really stubborn, but even more immature like that. And so, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say I probably wasn't that great to work with so young, but John has always been a wonderful positive force as somebody. And so because we have at North Coast Rep, they have actor mentors, I think is the title.
Yes.
It's a really cool experience because you see what like an adult who's working in the world, like in the professionalism and the skill and the ability that they bring to the craft. And so like as somebody that's like, even if I wasn't aware that theater was something I wanted to do, it was still a way to subconsciously like redirect your focus to be like there's a sense of professionalism and reverence to have towards the work you're doing, even though I was like a stupid little 7th grader.
Here's stupid little 8th grade me. I was in Romeo and Juliet with John, and you were playing Friar Lawrence, and I was playing Paris. And I remember I had very few scenes as Paris, and so in my mind, I said to myself, you know, I'm going to make the most out of this situation and just milk every single scene I'm in. But I wasn't really thinking about, but I was trying to play the role. I wasn't trying to make a joke of it, but I was trying to play the role. But I remember I had this bit that I did where, you know, Karina Hull is the actress that played Juliet in this production, and you were standing there, and I had this thing where I would back away, and I was like watching her, and it was like I was in love with her or whatever, and like I was super awkward and always got like last from the audience. And I remember watching your face, and you're just like, okay, Paris, like get off the stage, like it's okay, all right, Phillip, like, you know, it was just like, I remember backstage too, you know, it was always kind of like it was, I don't know what the circumstance was, but like we were both backstage, and you know the lights were like dimmed, and like the lights came up, and I always wanted to wait like an extra couple seconds, you know, just to make sure like my entrance was very like important, you know, like it was like you're waiting for Paris to come back on the stage, and so that was really funny. And then I remembered in Dire Van Frank, right? I really wanted to play Otto Frank in that production. And I remember talking to Jeff, and he was like, you know, they're probably going to get an adult actor mentor to play Otto. Yeah. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I need to play Otto. Like, I want to play Otto so badly. And then when you were cast as Otto, I remember I was super mad because I was like, oh, I really wanted Otto. But I was like, oh, but like John, you're amazing. Like, of course. Like, and I should not have played Otto in like 8th grade.
The same thing happened to me in The Outsiders. So I was like, I want to play Dallas. Yeah. Like if I don't play Dally, I'm gonna throw a fit. And then like Brian Mackey got cast as Dally and did an amazing job.
Yeah.
And
and then like, you know, 2 days in, you're like, you know what? They made the right decision. It's probably good that they didn't have, because like, you know, for those kind of roles, like you can't have someone young play those kind of roles, especially like in these productions, because obviously like, you know, Otto, it's years of experience, and it was just like an amazing performance by you, I must say, because I remember acting alongside you, and like there was another instance too where like, you know, I learned a lot from you in terms of like acting and everything. There was this one moment where we were backstage, and I was really like hunched over, and you were like, oh, like you're very hunched over, Phillip, and I was like, oh yeah, like for Mr. Van Don, you know, I got like I have like a little like hunchback, you know, because like I'm older, and you were like, oh, okay. Well, you know, you don't really have to do that. Like, it's not, he's not that old. Like, I was kind of like, I think I was approaching Mr. Van Don as like a really old person, you know, when like literally he was like, you know, your age or something, like younger, like at that time, you know, and I was approaching it like super old. So I learned a lot of things about that, and like a lot of things on the way, because like, you know, we would talk about the production, you know, and we would talk about certain things that like within the cast and the chemistry, on ways to like, you know, that we were all connected with each other as the characters, because a lot of times in plays it feels like, you know, in certain productions, like there's certain actors that feel like they're in a different play than other people, and it's not all connected. And so I feel like, you know, for you've always been the fulcrum of like many shows.
Pun intended.
No pun intended. That was a play I wrote. Never mind.
Oh, yeah.
But like, you know, where you're like this glue that's able to hold together a lot of the shows, and you know, and you're able to get these casts, you know, and like in the few times where it's been like younger actors, you're able to make sure that everyone's on the same page and everyone's doing a great job, you know, and like that's really where I think the term mentor is greatly utilized by you. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Phillip. And of course, I'm just doing one thing amongst many. All the cast has to be in that world together.
Uh-huh.
They all have to be dedicated to it. The director has to guide us, and I think that was true with every time I worked with either of you guys.
Yeah, and
sometimes both in the same show. So I think we accomplished what we set out to do.
I learned a lot about telling the story in a show from you, because I remember there was a lot of instances where it's just like, you just gotta say the lines, and like in my mind I was always like, oh, the lines aren't enough, you gotta do all these extra things like to act and everything, but like, the lines tell the story. Like sometimes you just gotta say the lines, and that was true with like Diary of Anne Frank. Opening scene, you're showing everyone around the annex and you're showing all the stuff, and like you're telling the story. And so it inspired all of us to tell the story, because at a young age, Jeff, like it's hard to focus sometimes.
I didn't even realize that, I think, even until high school.
Yeah.
Where, like, yeah, I learned, like, Siobhan, who is one of the directors we worked with later, taught me, like, what a moment before was, and what an objective was. But
because think of acting, it's just like, I am acting.
I'm full of emotion. Look at me emote. And it's like, well, you don't always need to do that. You can let the language and the text guide you to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, I didn't even learn that, I think, until high school, until I worked with, like, Steve Lipinski, and Steve was like, just get the lines out and use that to guide you as a basis. And
the lines are there for a reason, you know, like they're important.
And especially since we were working on Shakespeare, it was like super duper important, but it's still definitely applicable to every single aspect or every single genre of theater.
Absolutely. And Steve's a wonderful director, so I'm glad you got a chance to work with him.
Yeah.
CCA and Cathedral Catholic, I mean, I'm sure they all had good leaders to learn from.
Well, I just have to say, thank you for being a mentor. Thank you for coming out to see shows I had written or, I'd produced and like I was acting in. Same with Jeff. And, just thank you for being on the show. You've lived a very interesting full life, and it's great to dissect it, because I've always wanted to ask you these questions, but like when you rehearsing a show, you gotta rehearse a show. So thank you so much, John, and thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us on Mainstage Mavericks.